Is Odell Beckham Jr. doing enough to earn spot on Giants' wide receiver depth chart? White Sulphur Springs, W.Va. The New York Giants overhauled their wide receiver core this offseason, signing a handful of high-profile veterans: Odell Beckham Jr., Darnell Mooney, Calvin Austin III, JuJu Smith-Schuster and Braxton Berrios, and trading up in the third round for Malachi Fields. Still, everything hinges on the health of top returning receiver Malik Nabers. Advertisement While Nabers continues his recovery from a torn ACL and meniscus, the rest of the depth chart is wide open. Nabers' absence has allowed a crowd of complementary pieces to vie for roles early in training camp.
Fruit flies taking over your kitchen? This discreet plug-in trap uses light to attract flying insects, then captures them on a replaceable adhesive cartridge without noisy zapping or messy sprays. Want to get the best verified deal and see full details? Visit grabdeal.us/one right now.
Here's a player-by-player look at one of the most intriguing positions on the roster. Malik Nabers has had a steady workload since the start of training camp, participating in individual drills, running routes on air, and jogging through plays in install periods most days. Nabers is moving well, even if he still hasn't fully cut it loose. The Giants could ramp up Nabers more, but they have structured everything toward having him ready for the Sept 13 opener against the Dallas Cowboys. It wouldn't be a surprise if Nabers starts to work in team periods next week, which would be an important checkpoint in his comeback. Malachi Fields has demonstrated an ability to make plays downfield, which could be his primary role as a rookie. Unlike Jalin Hyatt, whose speed made him a deep threat exclusively, the 6'4", 222-pound Fields has the size to run underneath routes and use his physicality to make contested catches. With the Giants expected to lean heavily on two tight end packages, Fields has made an early claim for the no. Calvin Austin Austin was the most impressive wide receiver in the spring. That hasn't carried over to the start of camp, but he's still the team's top slot option. The slot receiver won't be featured nearly as much in this offense as it was when Wan'Dale Robinson was racking up 140 targets per season. But even the teams that employ big personnel the most use three-receiver sets when trailing and running 2-minute drills. That means Austin will have a role, and he should get the short targets Robinson once received in New York. Advertisement Darius Slayton isn't going anywhere due to his contract, but there are no assurances about his role. Slayton dealt with a sports hernia last season and had surgery in the spring. There's hope he'll bounce back now that he's healthy, but he's had a quiet start to camp as he works his way back into shape. Darnell Mooney feels a bit like the new Slayton. Mooney's warts have been overlooked because fans don't have a history with him, but he's had a similarly inconsistent career. Mooney hasn't stood out this offseason, as the 5'11", 177-pounder's stature limits his impact. Mooney is at his best on the deep crossers that offensive coordinator Matt Nagy's scheme features. 6 wide receiver doesn't necessarily have to play special teams, but Beckham will need to produce more this summer to justify carrying him as a depth receiver. Beckham looks like he still has juice, and that showed up Wednesday in his best practice of camp. The delay in signing Beckham in the spring involved both sides discussing the possibility his comeback bid falls short. Beckham will need to raise his play and maintain it to avoid that fate. Braxton Berrios' camp production by veteran slot receivers, especially with the second team, can be misleading. A savvy veteran like Berrios has a distinct advantage going up against inexperienced weak slot corners, and he has exploited that in camp. Still, his production can't be ignored. Berrios' return ability gives him true game-day value. He profiles as a replacement for Gunnar Olszewski, who tore an Achilles tendon in the spring. Dalen Camber special teams is the path to a roster spot for Camber, but his impressive receiving in camp is aiding his bid. Harbaugh said Camber is making a move, and he's got our attention. Those are strong statements about a second-year receiver who signed as an undrafted rookie last year. There are minimal offensive snaps available for the 6th wide receiver. Meanwhile, Camber averaged 12.7 special teams snaps in 7 games last season, so he could provide more value than other receivers vying for the final spot. Advertisement, JuJu Smith-Schuster had the most production in the spring of the 3 wide receivers signed June 1, but he's been quiet in camp, missing practice on Tuesday due to knee swelling. Smith-Schuster doesn't play special teams, so he'll need to pick it up soon to make a serious push for a roster spot. Jalin Hyatt. A year ago, optimists held out hope Hyatt would still develop. He is now an afterthought, even though he has made a few plays this offseason. If the Giants felt good about Hyatt, they wouldn't have added so many veteran wide receivers this offseason. The Giants hung onto Hyatt as a healthy scratch for much of last season to avoid cutting a third-round pick. They can't be worried about those optics anymore, and Hyatt should be craving a fresh start at this point. Isaiah Hodgins. It speaks to the pieces the Giants have added at wide receiver that Hodgins has fallen so far down the depth chart. Hodgins hasn't made any plays in camp to get into the mix. Hodgins has never played special teams, which is a major impediment to his chances. He is an ideal vet to stash on the practice squad. Xavier Gipson. The Berrios signing was a major blow to Gipson's chances of making the roster. If the Giants viewed Gipson as a viable receiver returner, they likely wouldn't have signed Berrios immediately after Olszewski's injury. Ryan Miller. It's impossible to see a path to a roster spot for Miller. He has to be hoping to land on the practice squad, but even that will be tough with so much competition for the final roster spots.